Hi, this is Ed King of Lynyrd Skynyrd.
I'm Johnny Van Zant.
And I'm Gary Rossington of Lynyrd Skynyrd. He just always felt like he was an outlaw because being from the west side of town and fighting and the reputation he had in the early days was like an outlaw. And then, I don't know, we were just kind of the bad boys in Jacksonville, and a lot of people didn't like us. And then when disco came in, like he says in the song about the pretty boys and their disco shoes and stuff, that was in our era in this early 70s and stuff. That was disco versus rock was a big thing. So we hated it. And all the bands and all the record stations, and you remember this, was playing disco and not us. So we really hated them, and he just kind of, that was Jacksonville. They hated us in the disco days because we were a southern rock band with long hair and showing up at these clubs and dance places like that, and they were dancing and doing Dance Fever, Saturday Night Fever.
Yeah.
It wasn't mixing, so he just kind of wrote his feelings down like that. But he felt like that, I'm sure, yeah. He always did.
Yeah, I'll never forget hearing about when Gary and Ronnie were going to approach Alan about joining the band. The story I heard, he was riding his bicycle, and they were driving a car, and he was hauling tail on that bike because he thought Ronnie was going to beat him up.
Yeah, we had to chase him up a tree that day.
Get him to join the band.
Threw his bike down and ran out in the woods and climbed an oak tree, and we had to call him down from this tree. At the road's end then. And we were kind of burnt out and tired and not really knowing what we were going to do, And then we had, of course, changed producers from Cooper to Dowd, and it was a lot of big change. And I don't know, times were changing at that time. All the southern groups were kind of dying out and going. The half of them were the Almonds and Marshall Tucker and Charlie Dan. All of them were kind of gone, either broke up or split up or not doing any good. We were like the only group left from the South before the new generation of the Hatchets and the 38s and stuff came along. It was like the end of a time, really. It was that time and the time when Ed left, and we were just kind of at the road's end, like I say. Well, I remember back then, and I guess still today, you have to do a certain many albums or CDs that you're signed to with a record company. And we had, and those days, we had to do a record each year. Ed King had just quit, and we just gotten Steve, and it was time to do a new record. So instead of not stopping for anything and continuing to tour and trying to write a record that we weren't ready for, we just decided to do a live one. And with Tom Dowd, he had just done Give Me Back My Bullets with us. We thought that we had the perfect guy because his record would do it, track record of doing live records. So we wanted to do it live to show people what we sounded like live, that we weren't like a band. A lot of bands back in those days would sound real good in the studio, but in live when you heard them, they would be terrible. Same as today, I guess. And so we wanted to show everybody that live what we sounded like.
Steve Gaines was just getting worked into the band then, too. He hadn't been with us.
No, and a lot of songs he didn't know. He was only with us a week or two, and he had to sit
in my living room, I remember.
He had to sit out and then turn his guitar down and fake like he was playing. And he didn't even play on a few songs, and then some he did play that he knew, Well, he hadn't learned them. He could have played and jammed on them, but we weren't that kind of band. We wanted it tight. So we made him turn his guitar down. We didn't want him to look goofy, so we just said, pretend like you're playing if you don't know it, but turn your damn guitar down. And he kind of would laugh, and he'd act like he was playing away with the guitar down. And then the one songs he knew, he'd play with us, and he did some solos and everything, but it was really kind of funny,
Yeah, he got enough in there to be noticed, and it wasn't long before Ronnie would be telling the audience to watch out. He'd sick a Okie on him. God bless Steve Gaines, man.
Steve to the band, and by then he was really a part of the band, so to speak. He had been with us for a few months, almost a year after. The 2 weeks we got him before the live album had been almost a year past before Street Survivors, and so he was like a member of the band.
By the time you went in to record.
Yeah, by the time, and he had wrote 2 or 3 of the songs, and we got with him. He was singing some, and we'd known him, and we'd lived with him. We knew him.
Finished during England and Japan and all these, Germany and France and all that, and we sold out everywhere. We were selling out everywhere we went, and everything we did went gold and platinum and stuff. We were doing real good. It was like the height of our career. We were kind of labeled just as journalists and stuff did. They labeled us America's Rolling Stones, But actually, we were selling more records and selling out more crowds than they did. We were doing better than them. I mean, statistically and stuff. But we were doing real good at the time. I guess we were about the biggest band around at that. Right then, I mean, there was a million bands around as good or better than us, but we were just really doing good then when it ended. But I don't know. It's a lot of things that led up to that made us do that, and we just was a working band. We just tried to be the best we could anytime and still are, It's the best we can do is what we try. He's really our everything guy, he did everything for us. He was our friend from day one, and he was like our only roadie for years, and ballet and friend and everything, like I say. And then Cassie and Steve, that was real bad that they both went, Actually, at the time of the crash, it was the only people who died were right up front. And it was Dean and me and Ronnie. I was in between Ronnie and Dean. And the other side was Steve and Cassie, and Alan was in between them.
So it was three on each side of the aisle?
Up front.
Up front.
And me and Alan were in between all four people that died. So we always, it's extra heavy to us that we were right there and we didn't die, and they did. But, that's just fate and whatever. But,
how badly were you injured?
Oh, real bad. I just got scars all over me. I had all my bones, not all of them, but just about all of them broke. Both legs and both wrists and both arms, upper arms and wrists, and my pelvic bone and all my ribs and my feet, and I don't know, just millions of things. Everything was broke.
I hear we technically lost you for
oh yeah,
a
I
while
was gone. I don't remember being gone. Like people die and come back, and I don't remember. I just was so hurt. I was kind of dead for a while, but Leon died, and they revived him. He was
Leon?
dead about a minute and a half. Pronounced, had no pulse, and I don't think I had one I don't think it was that long for me. I think it was like seconds for me, but I don't remember that. I don't remember dying and going to heaven and coming back. But it's heavy. I got to laugh at times because it's so heavy. If you don't laugh, you cry.
Well, sure, and I'm leading up to that. And I got one, and I'm sorry to take you through this.
No. I'm here.
Was there a storm? Why did the plane crash? What?
Actually, there was a malfunction in the right engine and the coupling, and that leaked all the gas out, and we ran out of gas. We had a full tank. Or two engines, we had two full tanks. And during the flight, one engine, you run off of one tank until it's gone, then you throw a crossover switch in that plane, and you use the other tank. Mm-hmm. So we were using one tank of gas for both engines, and the other spare tank was leaking the whole time. It was just dripping gas this whole hour and a half. We were up in the air. And so when the tank they were using was down to empty, they threw that switch and it went over to an empty tank. So the second they threw that switch, we went straight down. And it wasn't their fault. It was their fault for not knowing that happened, I guess. But it wasn't nobody's fault. Yeah. Of course they didn't do that because they died. It was just bad accident. But that's the reason. It ran out of gas. Just simple, ran out of gas. And it's a shame,
Youngest Van Zant brother, Johnny. Ed King maintains that Ronnie Van Zant had predicted it long ago.
Back when Ronnie was alive, when I was in the band, he told me many times that he said, one day soon I'm going to get out of this business. And he said, I'm just going to sit back and write the tunes, and my brother's going to be here singing them. He said it many times.
Here's Gary Rossington with current Lynyrd Skynyrd singer Johnny Van Zant.
Sometimes we'll be hitting the note, so to speak, hitting it and going, and I forget all the, I hate to say but all the stuff that happened with the old band, the bad luck and troubles, and just the blues we had, and the tragedies, and it all goes away with this because we're going on, and the feelings are there from. I know Alan and Ronnie and Stevie and all of them are looking down on us with the grins. I know this in my heart. I think I know, but as with Johnny's the only other person who would have to feel it that deep that it's all right to do this, from his brother. But I feel it, and I know that it's all right. But anyway, I feel this. It's like all the old stuff didn't happen, and this is so good and new and fresh, and it's kind of like we deserve it because we had so much bad that, man, and just to play music, that's the only payback we want, But that's a real good way to explain it.
I tell you, that is the truth, though. I mean, with me, myself, I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't believe that Ronnie would want me to do it.
Yeah.
Not at all. Because I got to die one day, and I wouldn't want him to meet me up there kicking my butt.
No, but no.
But no, man, I loved him, man. He was my brother, and gosh, man, I wouldn't do it for no other reason but those reasons. And again, it
It's
goes,
like Johnny said earlier, we're not. I don't compare us even with the old band because we are different and new. But we can play the old stuff as good or better, as the old, because I played it with them, and but the new stuff is in its own way is as good or better, so to speak. And I'm real happy with that, and it really takes away from all the old